Camilla hat gerade die ungeheuerlichsten Behauptungen aufgestellt, die diese königliche Familie je gehört hat. Und dann ging sie noch weiter.
Something that was never under any circumstances supposed to end up in Camilla's hands. But Queen Elizabeth had already seen this coming. Before she died, she left a decree sealed, specific, and devastating. When William finally read it out loud, Camilla began shaking right there in that room. What the Queen wrote from beyond the grave turned Camilla's entire world upside down in a single moment. The shocking debt. Honestly, this whole nightmare started over money nobody even knew Camilla owed. It started quietly behind closed doors with her own son's gambling debt, and it ended up burning down everything she'd spent years trying to build. Let's talk about how it actually went down. Camilla's son, Tom Parker B.S., from her first marriage, had a gambling problem nobody outside the family knew about. He'd been playing at a private members club in London. Owing them money could get you hurt. Men had been beaten in parking garages over smaller amounts than what Tom Parker B.S. owed. One man who fell behind 2 years earlier lost 2 fingers before he finally paid up. That was the world Tom Parker B.S. had walked into. And now he owed them more than he could ever pay back on his own. He lost big, really big. And the club gave him 3 months to pay it off before things got ugly. So Tom Parker B.S. did what he always did when things got bad. He ran straight to his mother, not to Charles. Never to Charles. Charles had already warned him once, dead serious, that he wouldn't bail him out again after the last mess. So Tom Parker Bowles skipped him completely and went to the one person who always found a way to fix things quietly. Camilla paid it. She pulled the money from an account only she controlled and wired it out without saying one word to Charles. Nobody in that house had any idea what she'd just done. And here's where you'd think it ends, right? Debt paid, lesson learned, moving on. It didn't end there. Not even close. 6 weeks later, Tom Parker B.S. showed back up. And this time the number was even bigger. He didn't ask nicely this time either. He told his mother straight up that if she didn't help him again, the story would get out anyway through the same people he owed. And when it did, it wouldn't land on him. It would land on her, on her name, on everything she'd spent years protecting. Before that dinner even started, Camilla had already made a shocking call. She'd reached out to a private collector, someone who buys and sells exactly this kind of high-value jewelry, and asked him to quietly put a number on a few specific pieces from Diana's collection. Not to sell them yet, just to know, just in case. Because deep down, Camilla already understood something the rest of the family refused to say out loud. Once William got real power one day, she'd have nothing. No protection, no guaranteed place at any table. So, she started building herself an exit years before she'd ever need one. Here's where things got really insane. Queen Elizabeth already knew. Her private secretary had already gotten hold of that exact valuation list. And so, things got pretty uncomfortable at that dinner. That night at Balmoral, the family sat down for what was supposed to be a quiet, ordinary dinner. Nothing formal, nothing official, just the family, plates, and low conversation. Then Camilla leaned forward, calm and easy, like she was just making conversation, and asked whether some of Diana's things could finally come out of storage. Framed as history, framed as dignity. She said the public deserved to see it. She said Diana deserved to be remembered properly, out in the open, not locked away in some room nobody ever entered. It sounded reasonable. It sounded almost kind. It wasn't because here's what nobody else at that table knew yet. The Queen already had proof this whole thing was a lie before Camilla even opened her mouth. Days earlier, the Queen's private secretary had gotten hold of a valuation list, the exact one Camilla had quietly gotten made by an outside collector. Real numbers sitting right next to real pieces of Diana's jewelry. That list was in the Queen's lap the entire dinner, while Camilla smiled across the table and talked about history and dignity like she'd never spoken to a soul about selling any of it. So, the Queen looked her dead in the eye and asked one simple question. Had she spoken to anyone outside the family about Diana's things lately? Camilla said no. She lied straight to the Queen's face. And the whole time the proof she was lying sat 3 inches from the Queen's own hand. Wait, she actually did that in front of the entire family? She did. And that's exactly where she made her first huge mistake, because William was sitting right there. And William heard something completely different than history. He heard his mother's memory getting turned into a price tag. He shoved his chair back so hard the whole table felt it. He stood up, pointed straight at Camilla, and told her exactly what she was. He said she destroyed his mother while she was alive, and now she wanted to reach into her grave and take what was left, too. He asked her who gave her the right to even say Diana's name at that table, let alone decide what happened to anything she left behind. Charles tried to jump in and calm things down. It backfired completely. He couldn't fully defend his wife, and he couldn't fully defend his son either. So he just sat there frozen, and that silence told everyone at that table everything they needed to know. The Queen didn't say a word about what she knew that night. But the real damage happened after Camilla left the table. The Queen pulled Charles aside alone and told him straight. His wife had lied to her face about the collector. She had proof, and she wasn't even going to bother confronting Camilla about it directly, because women who lie about money don't stop once they're caught. They just get better at hiding it. Charles said nothing back. He didn't defend her. He didn't argue. He just stood there. And that silence was the final piece the Queen needed. Because if her own son wouldn't stand up for the truth while she was still alive, she knew exactly what would happen the moment she wasn't. That same night, alone at her desk, the Queen pulled out a letter she'd been sitting on for years. Diana had written it to her not long before she died. And in it, Diana admitted she was afraid. Afraid of what would happen to her things if anything ever happened to her. And she named Camilla specifically as the one person she didn't trust anywhere near what she left behind. Diana had asked her quietly to make sure it never happened. The Queen had never told a single soul about that letter. Not until that night, sitting there with everything she'd just watched, she finally understood exactly what Diana had been so afraid of. Years too late for Diana to ever know she'd been right all along. That was it. That was the moment the Queen picked up the phone, called her private secretary, and started dictating a decree right then and there. Cold, careful, final. She wasn't leaving this to chance, to mood, or to whatever Charles might let slide years down the road. She wanted it locked away, in writing, permanent, untouchable. She named William as the one who'd guard that vault. Then she sealed it with her own ring. The same ring she'd only ever used twice before in her entire reign, both times to bury the two darkest secrets the family ever had. And William eventually found a reason to put that decree to use. The decree unsealed. Someone inside the palace, William never found out who, had picked up on Camilla reaching out to a private collector concerning Diana's jewelry. And that wasn't all he heard. Whispers about her son followed right behind it. Gambling debts, real money. The kind of trouble that doesn't stay quiet forever, no matter how many times you pay it off. William didn't know the full amount. He didn't need to. He just needed to hear debt and collector in the same breath to understand exactly what his stepmother was circling. So he went straight to the one place he knew could stop her cold, his grandmother's private files. He found the decree exactly where it had been sitting for years, sealed, untouched, waiting. William called for a meeting that same afternoon. No delay, no warning given beyond the summons itself. Camilla and Charles arrived to find him already seated, the file waiting on the table in front of him. The seal still unbroken. That wasn't a normal seal. Even opened it. Whatever this was, his grandmother hadn't written it lightly. She'd written it the same way she buried the worst things this family ever did. William broke the seal in front of them both and read it out loud. Camilla was denied access to Diana's private vault permanently, and from this moment on, full authority over that vault belonged to William alone. The room went completely still. Charles felt it before anyone even spoke. His face tightened, and for the first time all day, he couldn't dress it up as protocol or procedure. This wasn't paperwork to him. This was his mother reaching out from the grave to protect a woman she'd never stopped grieving. And Camilla sat there and burned with shame. Her face went hot. Her hands stayed still in her lap because she didn't trust them not to shake. She couldn't look at William. She couldn't look at Charles either. She stared at the table instead, at the broken seal open in front of her, and felt every second of silence in that room land on her like a verdict already read. Nobody had to say a word to her. The words on that page already had. This rejection came from the Queen herself in writing, sealed with her own hand, carrying the full weight of a final royal command. The door closed behind them with a soft, deliberate sound. A senior aide made sure of it personally, making certain that not one word of what just happened would slip into the corridors before the family had even absorbed it themselves. But William wasn't finished. His hand paused over the lower fold of the file. There was more. Beneath the first decree sat a second sealed instruction, untouched, waiting, marked for something called future entry authority. He looked up first at his father, then at Camilla, and understood in that instant that the most painful line in this entire file hadn't even been read yet. Whatever his grandmother had locked away in that second seal, she'd built it to survive exactly this moment, and none of them, not even William, had any idea just how far she'd gone to make sure of it. The confrontation and the missing page. Camilla didn't wait long before she tried to fight back. Barely an hour after that meeting ended, she pulled William aside, alone, no aides, no witnesses, just the two of them in a private room with the door shut. She asked him straight out if he actually intended to enforce this decree exactly as it was written. William told her he had no right to ignore his grandmother's final instruction. Not his place, not his choice to make. Camilla's face hardened. She said Diana's vault belonged to royal history, that royal property couldn't be locked away by grief forever, and that someone needed to be reasonable about this eventually. William's restraint nearly broke right there. He reminded her the vault wasn't a display room. It wasn't a trophy case for the palace to raid whenever it needed a moment of emotional weight. It held his mother's private life, letters, jewelry nobody had ever agreed who actually owned, pieces of a woman who'd been watched, used, and broken in public already, and he wasn't about to let anyone pick apart what little privacy she had left. Charles tried to step in, tried to smooth it over, said the decree probably needed careful interpretation. Camilla turned on him before he could even finish the sentence. She asked if he already knew her name had been written into that restriction before today. He didn't answer fast enough. That pause wounded her worse than anything William had said because, in that silence, she understood the truth. The Queen hadn't written some general rule about royal property. She'd written a wall with Camilla's name on it specifically. Catherine moved closer to William without saying a word. She didn't need to defend him out loud. Her presence did enough, steady and quiet, holding him in place without taking anything away from him. Then William laid out exactly how far this decree actually went. Camilla's shock turned sharp. He told her one more thing. If anyone tried to get around this decree in any way, it would trigger a full review of every single access request tied to that vault, going all the way back to the day it was written. Camilla understood exactly what that meant. If she tried anything at all, and it was discovered, every past attempt would be examined too. Not just this one, all of them. Camilla left that room with nothing. But she wasn't done. Not even close. That same afternoon, only hours after William's warning, she went straight to the one person in that palace who owed her everything, the archivist. Years earlier, when he was nobody, when nobody else would even consider him for the job, Camilla made calls, pulled strings, and put his name forward until the position was his. He never forgot that. And now she was calling in the debt. She sat him down privately and told him exactly what she needed. File a request in his own name, not hers, to catalog a few select items from Diana's vault for what she called a heritage review. Nothing that could ever be traced back to her. Nothing with her fingerprints anywhere on it. He agreed. He shouldn't have, but he did. That request looked harmless on paper, but it wasn't harmless at all. Catalog meant inspect. Heritage review meant someone was already planning to put those items on public display. Selected items meant someone already knew exactly which pieces they wanted before they'd even filed the request. The words were soft. What they actually meant was that someone wanted access to the vault without saying so directly. But the palace ledger owned names together on another unscheduled visit nobody had ever flagged. This wasn't one desperate moment anymore. Catherine walked straight to William that same night and laid all of it out in front of him. The pattern that couldn't be explained away as coincidence. William confronted Camilla immediately. And this time there was nothing soft in his voice. He didn't ask if she'd been involved. He told her exactly what she did in order, with a date attached to every single move she made. Camilla denied it straight to his face. She swore over and over that she never told anyone to go around that decree. The archivist didn't hold up nearly as well. When William pulled him in separately, alone, the man broke completely. He wasn't afraid of Camilla anymore. He was terrified of losing everything he had left, his job, his pension, his entire future, all because of one decision he made out of a debt he thought he owed her. William didn't wait around for more denials or more apologies. He froze the entire vault access system that same night on the spot. No official anywhere in that palace could move, touch, photograph, or catalog a single item connected to Diana without his written approval from that moment forward. Camilla had tried to slip through the one crack she thought nobody would ever notice. Catherine found it anyway, and the wall the Queen built years earlier had just gotten a whole lot harder to break. The second seal. The archivist resigned before midnight. Nobody had to push him toward that decision. He wrote his resignation letter himself in his own hand and had it sent to the palace office before William even asked him to leave. William didn't feel any relief over that. There wasn't time to feel anything at all, because the hardest conversation of the entire day was still waiting for him. And it wasn't with Camilla. It was with his own father. William found Charles alone that night, away from staff, away from anyone else in the palace. Charles spoke first. He told William the truth plainly, without trying to soften any of it. He said this decree didn't just protect a vault. It opened up pain the family had spent years pretending was gone. He said watching his own mother protect Diana from beyond death proved something he didn't want to admit out loud. The family never actually dealt with what happened to Diana. They just stopped talking about it. William told him straight back, this was never about punishing Camilla. This was about protecting my mother's dignity. Nothing more than that. He told Charles the torn ledger page would not be used against Camilla unless real proof demanded it. He wasn't going to let his own anger turn into revenge. Charles accepted that. He agreed not to fight the decree. And with that, William told his father he would break the second seal the next day. Charles said nothing. And honestly, nothing he said could have stopped William. The next day, William indeed broke the seal. Inside, the Queen had built something far bigger than a simple restriction. From this point on, nobody could approve access to that vault alone. Not William. Not any future king who came after him. Every single request needed a second signature from someone completely outside the family, someone with no royal title, someone Camilla could never charm, threaten, or pressure into looking the other way. That person already had a name attached to the seal. He was the solicitor who managed Diana's own personal estate while she was alive. Diana chose him herself years before she died. The Queen hadn't invented this safeguard out of nowhere. She was finishing something Diana had already asked her to do. But the seal held one more thing. The Queen's own private notes, still there after all these years. A copy of the valuation list Camilla had gotten made before that Balmoral dinner. And beside it, written in the Queen's own hand, a record of everything she'd confirmed about what Camilla had actually been planning to do with Diana's jewelry. William read every word of it, standing right there in that room. He finally understood the full truth. Camilla hadn't just asked for a display years ago. She'd already had those pieces priced. She'd already been building a plan to sell his mother's jewelry long before Tom Parker BS ever owed a single pound to anyone. That was exactly when William lost his cool. He found Camilla within the hour. He told her plainly that she would never touch anything that belonged to his mother again. Not the vault, not her name, not one single memory tied to her. He told her if she ever tried again through anyone in any way, he would make sure every page in that file became public with her name written across every single one of them. He wasn't only talking about the vault anymore. He was telling her to stay away from his mother completely for good. Camilla had nothing to say back.